It's Manager's Question Time. Just in case you're wondering, we do have a live audience with us tonight. Thank you very much, live audience. They're going to be asking questions and participating as much as they possibly can. We haven't just got our live audience with us tonight. We have a panel of top-class football types as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got the West Brom head coach, Tony Pulis, the Burnley manager, Sean Dyche, and Richard Bevan, the chief exec from the League Managers Association. Tonight we have a full 90 minutes. We're going to be talking about various topics like the standard of coaching, whether we have enough coaches. I'm also delighted to say we have a very important, well-dressed man in the room. Please show your appreciation for the voice of football. Mr. Ian Dennis is with us tonight as well. Tony Pulis, you've got to say that Ian Dennis is dressed beautifully.
Magnificent. He looks magnificent.
Ian's going to be roving around the room. If you do have a question, please put your hand up. We'll be speaking to Tony, to Sean and to Richard throughout the evening. We'll also be joined by Dan Ashworth as well. He's now got a very important job at the Football Association. And Ian has a number of guests he's going to bring in. And we'll also be speaking a bit later to Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, the new QPR manager. Let's start with our two managers tonight. Tony, how do you see your job? Because your title says head coach. Do you see yourself as a coach? Do you see yourself as a manager? Are you a babysitter? Are you a bit of everything?
Yeah, I think you are a bit of everything. I think the management has changed since I first started. Which was a long, long time ago. Then it was really a manager, a chairman, and a secretary that run a football club. If you actually look at football clubs now, there's so many people in between the manager and the chairman that there's a lot more managing up than managing down in respect of when I started.
Sean, your official title is manager. So do you do a different job to Tony?
Well, Tony's better to say than me, but I think there's a lot made of these titles now, and I think it's fair to say there are some clubs who specifically is head coach. I can't imagine that Tony, know him a little bit, doesn't have a say in plenty of things, but some situations, I believe, are literally head coach, and therefore you literally coach the players, have very minor responsibility as regards contracts and the business side, obvious responsibility to still feed back on players and players that you think were appropriate. And then other management sort of situations, like my own, at Burnley, they give me the chance to offer opinion on lots and lots of different things, particularly after time when they trust you a bit more, whether it's all sorts of different things, media, whether it's, fan-based things, whether it's things to do with the business side of the club, the contractual side, input into contracts, for example, rather than it taken completely away. And I think Tony will tell you, there's goods and bads of all of that. I think the good side is I get a feel of most things and have a say in most things. The bad side is you work every hour, that you can to try and make sure that it's all working in the appropriate manner as you see fit.
Is he right with that, Tony?
Yeah, very much so. It's all according to what you want as a manager in respect of what you're trying to do to your football club. I've always been very hands-on, right from the bottom right through to the top. That's the way I started. That's the only way I know. So I'm very interested in the academy all the way through, his youth team when I started, all the way through, to the financial situations. If there's not people filling the ground, I even question why, that's happening and what we can do to improve that. So I've always been hands-on in lots of respects, but, it's not just management now. The Premier League, the Championship is getting this way as well. It's a massive business, financial business. It's not just about football anymore.
But on top of that, you can also both find yourselves almost being a social worker on occasions, can't you? And you spend a lot of most of your days with these players who have deep personal situations they go through as well. And you have to help them through those as well sometimes.
Social life in this country has changed over a period of time, and football reflects society in lots and lots of ways. So you as a manager have to change as well, and you have to deal with the product that actually keeps you in the job, and that's players. So you have to understand, their social backgrounds. It's not just playing, but off the pitch as well. And you like you say, at times you are not just a manager and a coach and a financial guru, but you have to be a social worker as well then.
Richard, if you were counselling somebody fresh coming into the world of football management, what would you tell them is the essential thing they have to have? You can't guarantee success, of course, and there's a lot of short-termism in the job, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But what is, do you think, the key element, if there's a key skill out there?
I think the first thing I do is give them Tony Pulis' telephone number. He's managing all 4 leagues and closing on 1,000 matches, which only 20 people have done in the history of the game. But I think the modern day manager is really focused on being a leader, a manager, and a coach. I think all 3, if you want to survive. And I think you've got to have strong resilience so you can push through those tough times, and also make sure that when you do go through a tough time, you have a good relationship with your employer, your chief executive, your owner, which is not that easy these days with 1/3 of the clubs owned from abroad. And making sure that you get good communication. And I think from an LMA perspective, our message to members of all experiences is don't do it on your own.
Sean, Tony mentioned both the Championship and the Premier League. You've managed in both. Can you summarise the difference between the two? Is there a huge difference between managing a division down from the Premier League?
Yeah, absolutely. The immediate thing is the media coverage. It's enormous.
Well, give us an idea. How is it different?
Well, I was just saying before that on a personal level, purely as an individual, your profile raises hugely. To a literal point where people you've seen 1,000 times in local golf club start coming up to you and going, "Oh, hello, I haven't seen you in there." And you think, "Well, I've seen you 1,000 times," and it's literally that powerful. And people say, "Oh, you're always on the TV," as if you want to be on there. And you're like, "Well, I have to do it contractually." So, that changes radically for you as a person and for your players, of course, the profile of the club, and then handling that. Of course, on the pitch is a given. We all know the quality level, so, we could debate that all day, but the quality rises, the contracts rise, the complexities of the contract, then you've got the agents, the fees for the agents, aligning the agents, trying to sign players amongst so many powerful clubs, in the case of Burnley, that is, with our kind of minuscule financing comparison. I mean, you put it all in the melting pot, it's very, very demanding in every way. It's a fantastic league, I must say that. They're the main differences. The Championship is like a diluted version of all of it, but as Tony said, and he's right, the Championship is growing. It's getting more and more powerful. You look at some of the money now going into the Championship, from owners this is, not from the clubs actually making money, from the actual owners pouring money in, because obviously the TV money goes up and everyone wants that demand to be in the Premier League, and it raises everything. So they are similar, but the Championship is a diluted version of the Premier League, and the Premier League is enormous, there's no two ways about it.
We want to talk a lot about coaching this evening, and I got a question sent in from Mark Aspinall today, Tony and Sean, and it was about the fact that many managers, when they move to a new club, will take their coaching team with them. Is that because you, as the boss, have a very clear idea of the skills that are required in your team to deliver what you want on the training ground, and therefore you need people that you trust, you need people that can do that job and complement you perfectly?
I think that they complement you, that they work with you and not work against you, and that's not being disrespectful to anybody. But over a period of time, the longer you stay in the game. The other thing is we talked about there being a chairman, a chief executive, a sporting director, whatever, a financial director, 3 or 4 people between you and the chairman. If things don't go very well, then managers become very, very insecure. It's a very, very tough job, especially as Sean said, if you're managing the Premiership, the pressure on you is absolutely enormous. So you need someone you can trust and someone who you believe is with you. Irrespective of what people say, the other 3, never mind how close you are all employed by the chairman. So you've always got that thought they most probably are the chairman's man when it comes down to it. So it's nice to have experience. I've always gone for experienced people with 1 or 2 younger. The mixture of my coaching team has always been 1 or 2 younger ones, where they're bright and they entertain the players at times on the training pitch. But people like Jerry Francis and David Kemp, who have been wonderful for me in respect that they're older than me, they're more experienced, and they're very steady people. So when the ship is rocking a little bit, I know I can go to them and speak to them, and they will give us good advice. But the balance is important. But that trust, you must have someone with you who you can trust. He's your man, and irrespective of what goes on and what doesn't go on, he will, whether he agrees with you or not, when it comes to it, he'll back you and follow you 100%.
And what's your own personal view, Sean? Do you like people who see things the same way as you? Do you like people who will have an argument with you about the way you do things?
I specifically chose my immediate 2 staff.
Ian Wome's your assistant, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, a lot was made at the time, even at Watford when I was there, that he was a friend of mine, which he is. But he's a completely different person to me, and I knew that. You know, I don't choose people the same as me, because if you want to process information, you need different opinions. Tony Loughlin, who works with me as well, very experienced, you know, in a different way than Tony's people. Tony's experience from literally being on the grass, working with players for many, many years. We're sort of a younger coaching team, if you like. Billy Mercer, who's there as a goalie coach, we're all younger end of the market, still learning, still developing, still open-minded to everything that gets thrown at us, and still bouncing ideas off of these gentlemen. I rang Tony last year for his opinion on a couple of different situations.
Was he helpful?
No, he told me that he wants to beat me every time he plays me, and he said he's not going to tell me anything. But no, so that was my reasoning behind it. And then, you know, the good side of the LMA, I've got people there I can get a phone call to, and sometimes it's just for a different view. It's for an outside view. People who've been in the game are very, very honest, and I ask them to be brutally honest. If they come and watch my team, just tell me the truth. Don't tell me, oh, you've done okay if you haven't. Tell me the truth about the way the team operates. Because even with good staff, sometimes you have to be an outside looking into what you're trying to do, can give you the real key pointers and the real key helps.
We'll go to Ian Dennis in a moment, but on that point that Sean was making about the LMA, is that an important part of your role, to be that sounding board if a manager needs some advice on something?
Yes, absolutely. I tend to regard ourselves as the professional home for managers and indeed a lot of coaches that we help as well. And I think from our perspective at the LMA, based here at St George's Park, we have 350 members, and whatever needs our members have, whether it's a legal employment advice, whether it's a technical advice, a health issue, we find the very best people to link up with the manager to give him the best possible advice and support. So we're facilitators in many ways.
If you just tuned in your radio, that's the voice of Richard Bevan from the LMA. We've also got Tony Pulis from West Brom and Sean Dyche, the Burnley manager, with us tonight. Ian Dennis is out amongst the crowd at St George's Park. Ian, who have you got with you?
Well, I've got Andrew from Bexley who's with me, and Sean just a short while ago was talking about owners pouring money into the club. And Andrew, you've got a question as to whether these gentlemen would actually become owners.
Yes, with the Salford his story that's been going on with Gary Neville, etc., would you be tempted to, A, go and watch a grassroots football match, and B, would you be tempted to invest in your own local team?
From my point of view, obviously I'd need to have Tony's finance to do that. I'm a young manager earning my spurs, so I haven't got that level of finance. But no, I mean, it's a complex situation, I think. And, you know, owners, I think all owners do have a thirst for it. You know, sometimes there's this idea that it's a toy for them. I don't think that. I think they have a thirst to do it. I think it is more complex than most owners think, having spoken to a few. You know, once they get into it, they go in maybe a little bit rose-coloured glasses, thinking this. Maybe they're, for example, if it's your local club and you've done well out of business, let's say, you want to put some money into the club, the community, you think it's a really good thing to do. And then by the time you've been hammered 4,000 times on Twitter and Facebook, they kind of think, it's not such a good thing, maybe I should do. It's different for us. We've got inside looking out view. You know, I would never say never, but at this stage, I don't think I'd have the finance to do it. But you never know.
No chance.
The short answer from
I'll be
Pulis.
absolutely blunt. No chance.
Why not, Tony? Just doesn't.
My
don't
wife's
fancy
got
it?
all my money. No, I wouldn't fancy it. You know, I think if I was in control of something and I was spending the money I'd want to spend, I'd interfere too much. And I don't think that's the right way of doing it.
Sean was interesting when he said that he rang you last year for some advice. How often do managers at clubs ring each other? Because I know that
it's sad at the moment because you know I get more managers ringing me now. Where when I was younger, I'd be ringing other managers, and it just it makes you realise you are getting old. But I had a phone call this week from a young manager who, just said, obviously it's my first job. I need to do this and put a philosophy on this and put a philosophy on that. And I stopped him and just said, forget about the philosophies. You've got to win a few games, mate. And to win a few games, just go, find out what your strengths are in your squad and play to your strengths. Cut down all the nonsense and go back to basics and win a few games. Irrespective of what you want or what you don't want in football, if you're a manager, you have to keep it bubbling at the top. If you don't win football matches, you will not be in a job very long. Stats say that. So you have to keep that bubbling at the top. The top end of that is absolutely vital to win games. Then that gives you the opportunity and the time to then put in place below a structure that football club then will grow from and get stronger and stronger and stronger. But if you're not winning, you just don't get that time, Matt. And everything, unfortunately, in our industry is about that 90 minutes on a Saturday. and winning that game on a Saturday.
I mean, I think it's not just Tony. I mean, Adi Boothroyd's there somewhere. Adi, I work with at Watford. I speak to Adi, I speak to Ray Lewington, I speak to John Duncan, formerly LMA and still linked to the LMA. Sir Alex is always available. Yeah. You know, there's a number. It's not just one person. It might be a certain issue that you think that person could help you with. And what you find is most are really open and honest. You know, more so than you'd think. You know, you're not going to bring them. Let's face it, you don't bring them the week that you're going to play them and start talking about the tactics. It could be miles away from the game. You know, I think over years you do suss out the ones who are really open, the ones who want to help you. Some don't. Some are really closed and don't want to help you. And the network opens up quite simply, really. The odd contact, the odd bumping into Tony down the years. You know, I played and Tony's teams, etc., etc. Neil Warnock's another one. I could pick up the phone to him. And they'll always offer you an opinion. That's the main thing, because that's often what you want. You don't want to keep going, you're doing well. You want more than that. You want a bit of substance to it, you know, and a bit of advice, if anything. And I think you've got to be open to that. I personally believe, as a young manager, you've got to be open to that. Because if you think, the one thing I've found out, if you think you've got every answer in this game, you are done. Because you certainly haven't got every answer in this game.
At a recent LMA meeting, Carlo Ancelotti said there are no more secrets in football. I think that's got an interesting debate. And definitely amongst the membership, not just in this country, but abroad. I think the friendship and the links between the managers and coaches is immense. You see it more than other sports because of the volatility of the job. I think there were 20 sackings in the Championship last season. Already this season, my office has looked after 24 managers who've been sacked and probably another 30 coaches. The managers have a great relationship with each other, and that's one of the most motivating things for many of us who work in the LMA.
That brings us nicely onto the issue of short-termism, which I mentioned a little bit earlier on. Tony, you said that it's about winning games, but both of you must go into a job, wherever that might be, even with your reputations, when you first take that job on day one and you think, at some stage, I will get sacked or move on to a different role. And that is something that is quite unique, isn't it, in football management? If you look at it that way, do you look at it like that?
No, because you have that belief, like any situation, you go into it because you think you can turn it around, you think you can make a go of it, you think you can improve it, move it forward, whatever it may be, at any level. It's a thirst to do something that maybe isn't happening. It's a thirst to change. It's the thirst to, no matter what look at some of the jobs realistically. They're almost unmanageable. And yet there'd be a queue, 50 managers, coaches, call them what you will, who are waiting for that chance. And it is a bug. There's a draw towards it. Not everyone. It's not for everyone. I know good members of staff, very experienced people who don't want to be a manager. They've made that clear even to their managers and other people. But the thing is, there's a desire within you that thinks you can make a go of it, no matter what the circumstances. And I think that's what keeps managers alive, really, the thought of the what-if story. What does turn it around? As I suggest, Adi did it at Watford. I did it last year at Burnley. Ian Holloway did it at Blackpool. Situations really when people got no chance, they won't do that. And then you do it. So,
for me personally, every club I've managed, I've always gone in thinking when I do leave the club, and I will leave the club, just a custodian of that club for a period, and that's determined again by results and other things that maybe surround those results, is that when I walk away, I want the club to be a better club. So if I ever have to go back to that club, I can hold my head up high and say, I did a decent job here. And that has always been my philosophy in respect of management, to get the results, to give me time to put in place a structure that makes this club a better club when I leave.
And the other thing which is unique about football, and we've got a room full of coaches here, and don't put your hand up because it's radio, I need you to make a noise. Who genuinely thinks if they were to take over the club that they support, they'd do a better job than the current manager?
You shouldn't be in the audience.
Ian Dennis is in the audience as well. Ian, you've got a question.
Well, just talking about short-termism, that would prevent a manager planning for the long term. And Marcus Kohler, who's representing Dynamo Foxton, is with me. And that pressure, I think, relates to your question, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so. It's a question really for Tony. At grassroots level, we see our kids progress into academies. We see fantastic talent going through. And yet there's this huge bottleneck when it comes to them playing at the top level. And these kids are going to waste, and that's affecting our national game. And how can we turn this around? Germany can do it. Spain can do it. Why can't we play our youth players anymore?
Well, this is the greatest country in the world for professional football. There's not a country in the world better than our country. The leagues that are organised, You know, there's 4 professional leagues. You look at under that, and you've got, you know, the Vanarama League. You've got the one under that. Absolutely fantastic leagues. We've got, you know, parks football. You know, I had a Sunday off the other week, and I've got grandchildren now. I took a little boy down to watch a game in the park. You watch the game, you know, and I really enjoyed the game. I think this country is absolutely fantastic. Yes, we've got it a little bit wrong in the academy for me. But don't underestimate what we do in this country in respect of professional football and amateur football. I think and I've travelled the world, and I've seen different people doing it, and I've seen us do it. And this country is absolutely top draw.
Sean, what's your link with the academy at Burnley, and how closely are you aligned with that, and you look at the way that they're doing things and some of the players coming through?
I think it's close enough to have an input, but not so close where it's dominant, you know, because as Tony said, whatever happens in football, you will come and go at some point. And, you know, people like Tony, when you're young and you're learning, you pick the phone up and you do speak to them, it's a key message, you know. If the worst happens, the club's in a better shape than when you took over. You know, that's one thing. And if you can affect it through the system, even better. But he also said, and he's 100%, you've got to win first. Tony was talking about it earlier before we came on, and it's a really key thing that management at the moment, particularly young managers, because they're all fighting for a chance, it's like brand before you've done anything. Win first. I know that. That's a given. You've got to win first. And then if you win, you buy time. If you buy time, you build. And when you build it, then you can start seeping into the club in its entirety, I think. For me now, yes, I do have a say in the academy, but I don't dominate it because there'll be another version of me at that club at some point. Try and give it some key core values, things that are going to go well through the system on the journey, the pathway into the first team, which we've made clearer over the last couple of years, but not dominate it. Let the coaches work, let them work with the players, and let them build the true pathway into the first team for many years to come. That's in theory, anyway.
We're going to pause for a minute and get some news and sport on 5 Live. But Sean, you touched on the point that the media is a huge part of your job. And Richard, I'm sure that's part of your role to talk to managers about how they deal with the media as well. Tony, you said right at the start how the job has changed. Surely that interaction with the media and the microphones under your nose and the cameras in your face, that has changed immeasurably, hasn't it?
Well, if you look at when I played, 2 lads would go to a game of football, watch a game of football, they'd go down the pub, have a couple of pints afterwards, win, lose or draw, and they'd meet up the following Saturday to go and watch that game on the Saturday. Now, you play a game of football, you know, there's Twitter going on, there's the radio going on, there's the TV going on, just on the game as it's taking place. Afterwards, then there's debate after debate after debate. It's just absolutely non-stop. And you have to deal with it. They have to sell their product. They have to, you know, sell the programs and everything else. So football's become an enormous product. You know, it's not just sport anymore. It's a product, and you have to deal with it.
Do you like it?
I like some of it, and I think the best way of saying it, I accept the job I'm in. I accept what it comes with. It's been a wonderful life for me. 16 years of age, coming out of South Wales. And still being in football at my age now, I've been blessed. So I accept the good and the bad together. And there's stuff that I'd love to be able to avoid. There's stuff that I'd love to have done differently and not done as a younger manager. But, you know, I accept it all within the package because it was a dream of mine to play football. It was a dream of mine to coach. It was a dream of mine to manage. And all those dreams have come true. So how can I sit here and complain about anything when all that has happened?
That's a very good way of looking at it. But in terms of the way things have changed, I mean, now you could have a player who's not even in your first team squad who could do something on a Friday night, which someone has taken a picture of or videoed in some random bar miles away from where you play or train. And that all of a sudden becomes the main story that weekend. And that... So, I mean, you could drive yourself crazy thinking about that, couldn't you?
I think the players are made more aware of it now. I think the players understand it more. There's still individuals who you know, more the younger ones than the senior ones, who get caught up in this, and that's lack of experience. But I think the younger generations of footballers, or the footballers who are in professional football, especially at the top level, they understand the bubble they're in. Like I say, you know, even going back 10, 15 years ago, we could go down the pub and have a pint and sit at the end of the bar and have a discussion with someone. You know, I wouldn't even dream about going in a pub now. You just couldn't do it, you know, unless you knew that, you know, the pub and the people in it.
No, it's a shame, really, I think. Remember that idea you used to go in a pub, even as a player, you could have a pint and a chat with someone genuinely about the game, and just a reasonable chat, and a supporter or a supporters group or a group of. Now you are fearful that they'll tweet something you've said, take a photo. You know, the old favourite, one glass of wine, I was smashed, had 15 glasses of wine, etc., etc. I haven't had that experience myself, but you understand the train of thought. And I think it's become so much harder to just stand and have a chat with someone, not necessarily in a pub, a restaurant, give them an honest view. Next thing you know, it's on Twitter, Sean Dyche, Tony Pulis, whatever, said this, said that. And it makes a big story out of it.
You can't even make a throwaway comment, can you? Because all of a sudden that's twisted and say, you win a game 3-0 and you say, oh, we're always going to win it, weren't we? As a fan asks you a question, and all of a sudden Dyche disrespects Allardyce, whoever it might be.
Yeah.
Yes or no question from you before we go to news, Richard Bevan. A manager comes to you, says, Richard, I'm thinking about going on Twitter. Do you say yes or do you say no?
The answer is getting to yes, actually. And what I mean by that is a year ago, many people in football would have said, no, don't do that. Now, actually, by not being involved in Twitter and not understanding social media, you can create a problem for yourself at the club. So understanding it and learning how to embrace it, working with people in the club, it is a very, very important. I was driving along to here this morning, and they were talking on the radio about Carlisle players going on Twitter last night, offering their help to people that got issues with the floods. And I was thinking, Twitter has a fantastic place in our society as well. It is 24/7, and it's not just the pressure on managers, it's actually pressure on owners.
It's been great to speak to Richard Bevan from the League Managers Association. Please give Richard a big round of applause. We are going to take a break for the news and sport on 5 Live. We shall be back, though, in a moment with Tony Pulis and with Sean Dyche, live from St George's Park.
This is 5 Live Sport.
Welcome back to a 5 Live special. This is our manager's question time. We're live from St George's Park. We have a live audience with us tonight. Good evening, everybody, again. Oh, they're good. They are good. If you just tuned in, we have the West Brom head coach, Tony Pulis, in the room. We have the Burnley manager, Sean Dyche, and joining us for the next part of the programme, the FA Technical Director, Mr. Dan Ashworth, is here as well. Dan, can you please, we'll give you 30 seconds, explain your job in 30 seconds if you can. FA Technical Director, big job. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, two things really. It's to oversee the teams. We've got 16 England teams from 15 through to seniors, and then the education and qualification pathway.
Okay,
less than 30 seconds.
That was very impressive. So I'm sure there's some questions for Dan and for Sean and Tony. Again, Ian Dennis is out there somewhere, so put your hands up, and we'll talk a bit about coaching and bringing those quality coaches through as well. Gary Neville's been an interesting story in the last 10 days. He watched his new Valencia team draw with Barcelona. He's now in the job. Tony, is that good for young British coaches that somebody like Gary Neville has taken that job?
Yeah, there's been a great concern for me that the top players of the last generation have seen to bypass being managers and actually going into TV or going into the media. If you look at Carragher, Redknapp, and Gary, just as three, I've been impressed with Neville on the TV. I've spoke to Jamie Carragher a lot. Obviously, I know Jamie Redknapp, and they're three that you would say yes, that they could be successful as managers, and actually not doing the job or not having a go. You worry about losing players now finished football with so much money. They're nice and comfortable. Do they need all the hassle that we get? Do they need all the problems that we get? Or can they have just a great life being involved in football, but on the media side where, there's not so much of the pressure. So for Gary to go there and take the job, I'm absolutely delighted. I rang Carragher up afterwards and said, make sure you don't wait too long for yourself to make the move. Because I really, really want younger players who have been very, very good players and very, very good professionals at that top level to have a crack at it. Some of them will be good, some of them will find it difficult, some of them won't enjoy it. But have a crack at it and let's get the British coaches through. Is
that something, Sean, that you have genuinely considered when you've been out of work, working abroad? Would you do that?
I don't know about in the future. I think the first thing for me was to try and get a foothold in it here. I came out of Watford pretty quick, got a second chance at it, and really it's trying to get fouled, trying to be recognised as a manager first. You know, it takes time. I mean, I'm in my 5th season now, so at least people know that you're a manager. You've got some skill set to approach a chance at being a manager and trying to be successful in the future. Going back to Gary, I think is really interesting, genuinely. So I don't want anyone to mix my words, but I think for someone with no experience whatsoever, as regards management, that is, by the way, because Tony will tell you more than me. You know, you've got every idea when you're a player or you're a young aspiring coach or an assistant or whatever it is. When you get in that seat, it is way, way, way different. Now, that's at any level.
And actually,
So
he
if
looked
you're in
nervous
that
for the
seat-
first time in that press conference, didn't
you know,
he?
when
Speaking
I
in front
was,
of
you know,
players.
the first coaching job I had was at Bournemouth with Harry Redknapp. Harry was manager, and I can remember coming in one day and speaking to John Kirk, who was the old trainer at the ground then. And you know, there was a little bit of pressure on Harry and everything else, and saying, you know, how can we help? How can we do this and do that? And Kirky said to me, Tone, you don't know what Harry's going through until you sit in that seat. You can't imagine what he's going through. And he was so right, you know, until you actually sit there and all the arrows, all the guns and everything else is pointed at you and the pressure is on you. You know, how you will react and how will you respond to the pressure that comes with a job. So for all the, you know, the courses and everything that we set up and the wonderful work that the FA do in that respect, you know, until you actually get in that position, whether it's at grassroots level all the way through to Premier League football, it's a different job.
When you're looking retrospectively and you've got every answer sitting watching a game after the moment, and yeah, again, don't twist my words with this, but you know, that's a way easier task. When it's happening right in front of you and you've got seconds to make decisions, whether it's substitutions, tactical decisions, then at half time, everyone's staring at you. You've got to make sure you give them an answer that's going to affect the outcome of a game. Whole different situation.
Dan, we'll talk a bit about development of coaching later on, but you know, there's no guarantee that Gary Neville's going to be successful. But one thing we don't do much of in the UK is export coaches to other countries. Is it essential that he has success so that other people, if Sean wanted to go abroad or another coach wanted to ply their trade in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, somewhere like that Gary is successful?
I think it would give a boost to all of the British coaches and the whole of the industry here. There are some examples of coaches who've gone and been successful. Roy Hodgson, for example,
of course,
worked abroad and was very successful abroad. And I think if you talk to Roy, he talks about some different experiences in culture and tactical experiences, and it's been very beneficial for him. So I think, you know, all of us sitting here wish Gary well and would be really keen for him to be a success and perhaps be a beacon for more British managers to go overseas.
Will it improve his England role as well, do you think?
Yeah, I think, as Tony and Sean have already said, I think, you know, to recognise actually being a manager and sat in the hot seat, and I've never done it, I've got the utmost respect for the people that do it, but until that, you actually have to make a decision on a player, tell a player they're not playing, make those decisions within the game that Tony and Sean are talking about. You never know, I suppose, until whether you're going to enjoy it or be any good at it. But I certainly think it will make Gary a better assistant to Roy, having the 5 months experience of being a number one, and also working in a top league like the Spanish League, having Champions League experience and working for a club like Valencia. I can only see it benefiting Gary and the national team.
I think the two things link into that. One, I think his role with England will prove when he gets with the team if his head stops spinning from the amount of work he's doing over there. So that's one thing. And the second thing, I think it's really important. You know, I'm still relatively young in management terms for sure, approaching 200 games. But I look around, you know, I'm desperately was hoping Brendan Rodgers went and won the league, for example. Did a great job overall, and I think it'll be reflected upon in time. But you want them boys, Tony, what he does, you want them to continue. You want them to be, you know, out there doing well. Eddie Howe doing well. You know, trying to get these people to do well more often, because then we can maybe turn the trend, because I think there is a trend for European managers, world managers, whatever, you know, from different continents, different countries, etc., etc. There seems to be a trend for that. And with, you know, it's important that all of these English managers, so if Gary goes abroad, of course it's important for the bigger picture for all of us that he's successful. It's just the challenge is a real tough one, I think, you know, to walk in there with no actually hands-on experience and make that work. If he does it, fantastic for all of us, I think.
Ian Dennis is out in our live audience tonight. Ian, who have you got with you?
Well, I have Amin with me on the front row. My knowledge of Arabic is limited, apart from Kif Halak and Shukran. So thank you. By the wonders of modern technology, Amin has asked this question, and it ties in with what you're just saying about decision-making and risks. And this is for Tony. Are you adventurous in training, and what type of risk, it says you have made, but have you made?
Make a risk waking up every morning and going into work. No, my training and coaching is very structured. I don't think I've moved a lot over the past 20 odd years in what I expect and what I want. We work very hard early in the week. We work a lot on the shape of the team, on the discipline of the team, what we try and achieve as a group. And I work the players hard. The players work with a lot of intensity. And we work in a way that I think will help us win games. Do we work a lot on the opposition? I think more so in the Premiership. I've spent more time working in respect of trying to stop the better teams and giving us a better opportunity. We played, Tottenham on Saturday, and Tottenham narrow in. They're as narrow a team as you'll play. And we worked all week on switching play. They'll press you, they'll get the ball down one side of the pitch. A very, very fit team. And they'll get the first 3 or 4 players up to the ball if they lose it as quick as they can. And they try and regain when you're trying to stretch. So we worked very hard on getting that ball out of that press as quick as we could to the other side of the pitch. 2 or 3 days doing that. So, I will work in respect of the teams we're playing. I will coach in respect of the teams that we're playing. But basically, the structure of my team will stay the same.
Thank you for the question. I mean, loads of coaches in the room with us here. There's probably quite a few listening on 5 Live as well tonight. Standard of coaching in this country, where do you think we are and where do we need to get to?
Well, I think we get given a hard time with the standard coach in this country. I think we get these the quotas and percentages and comparatives to other countries, and we're not comparing like for like. Number of B licence, A licence, pro licence coaches that Germany and Spain maybe have, and without getting into a long debate on it, we're not comparing the same numbers. We transferred our UEFA coaches over more recently than the other countries. So I do think that we're given an unfair, hard time on it. And I've got to say, from going around the world in my previous roles at club level and with England, I haven't seen a magic formula anywhere else where you think the coaching is miles better than we have in this country. I remember as a young coach going to Ajax X number of years ago, and at the time Ajax were the one that were producing all the young players and thinking, right, that's it, I've arrived, I'm going to see the secret here. And it was very, very similar, and there was anything different that we'd seen in our own country. I think it's about playing opportunities. And making sure that young players get playing opportunities. And I think our coaching and coaching network is as good as anything in the world.
Ian Dennis is out and about again. Ian, who have you got with you this time?
Well, yeah, I mean, the last few days here at St George's Park, connecting the game has been sort of like the message, really, with regards to the National Coaching Conference that has been held here. And I'm actually with the FA's Head of Elite Coaching, Jamie Robinson. And, Jamie, we've just heard about Dan talking about how we compare to the countries elsewhere in the world. How is it from your point of view?
Yeah, I think... obviously, to support Dan in our role here within FA Education, it's fascinating working with coaches, because obviously the demands of the game, the demands of I suppose the modern learner, whether it's the player or the coach that's on a coaching course or involved in coach development, is fascinating. We just I suppose as a governing body want to support our coaches and inspire our coaches working with the players to try and create the best future potential players and managers and coaches that are working in the game to evolve from this fantastic base we've got here at St George's Park.
And when Tony says he'd like to see others, younger coaches, have a crack, have a go at it, is there the pathway for coaches to go down that avenue here in England?
Yeah, very much so. And we're working obviously tirelessly to try and support our coaches in this country within the grassroots game or within the professional game, from academy level right the way through to the pro licence for people working in the Premier League. We have coach development systems within the country that's supported by the Premier League and the Football League and the PFA to try and support coaches working with their players night in, night out. So Sean's talked about the decision-making process as a coach. It only really comes alive on those when you're working with the players on a match day or in training, and that's where we're trying to support the coaches in situ alongside them to try and support them make sense of this fantastic gift that we've got being involved in football.
That's interesting, though, Dan, as you've been going around the audience. I mean, I've just been speaking to James from Kettering and also Eddie Ward, who's representing Calverton, and they talk about behaviour, maybe what the panel would think about, the impact that, in terms of role models, that they have, because everyone keeps talking about the last few days, you're trying to create that different culture here at St George's Park. Instances that we've seen recently regarding Diego Costa, of course. How do you, at the top end of the Premier League, try to be role models that seeps all the way down to your 5 and your 7-year-olds at the start of that sausage factory, as Eddie says, but also to parents as well, to try and create that right culture?
Sean?
Well, from not the individual basis, but the first thing I'd get rid of in the Premier League is diving and cheating. I'd get rid of that with retrospective looks at filming. So therefore, my kid plays and I see 10-year-olds diving around on the fly. I can't see how that's good for the game at all. And yet everyone seems to just get on with it as if like, oh no problem. Because apparently it's culturally accepted in Europe. So therefore, weirdly, we should do that. I don't agree with that. And I think that would naturally send messages to little kids who are learning the game. Going to parenting, when I was at Watford, they had a fantastic sign that they used to put out for the parents. You wouldn't shout at your children when they're learning to play the piano. Or you wouldn't shout at your children when they're learning to read. I thought it's never been more appropriate. I go watch my kid play. He's in academy at the Cobblers now, but before that, when he was just playing local Sunday football, some of the parents were unbelievable. I thought, what is going on here? And near fights, screaming at kids who are 7 years old, and like their life depends on them winning this game. And it's going to make or break their weekend if they win or not. So I think, and I must make it clear, I'm not making out remotely, I'm a super parent, but I don't stand there screaming at my lad when he's playing football. I talk to him and then try and educate him about it, but I don't scream at him about it. So I think that's a parental thing, and I know clubs are doing a lot about it. They really are trying to educate parents, and I'm 100% sure, because the thirst has changed. My parents' thirst for me was purely to be a professional footballer. Amazingly proud that I became a professional footballer. Not because I had money or made money, any of that, just proud. Now, of course, the game's radically changed. You're not only possibly being a professional footballer, you're now setting up people's lives forever, parents' lives, brothers, sisters, cousins, everything. So I think there's a much greater thirst on the material side of football from an adult's point of view with their children than there was from mine, which was just an era when absolutely buzzing that I was a professional footballer. But I must make it clear, I'm not judging anyone. That's just my honest opinion of them situations.
You're listening to a Manager's Question Time on 5 Live. We're live from St George's Park. We have a live audience with us. We have Sean Dyche, who you've just heard. We have Dan Ashworth, who's the FA Technical Director. And Tony Pulis, the West Brom head coach, is with us as well. Tony, on that issue that Sean was just talking about.
I think there's two major issues in the academy, and one is playing time for the kids. I think there's wonderful talent in academies. I just don't think they've got the opportunity to play at a level that they deserve to play at. I sometimes think they're not pushed to play at that level. They're held back, which is a problem. But secondly, I think there's a social issue. And the social issue is that there's more single-parent families now in England than there's ever been. And, we have a responsibility as an academy to actually teach life skills, to bring these kids up in a more rounded fashion. If they're not getting mentored by their parents, or if they're going to schools where they're not getting mentored by their parents, they actually don't know the difference between right and wrong. And we have a response. We spend enormous amounts of money. You just look at the facilities at this place. It's absolutely fantastic. But we have to look at the reasons why we're not producing the players. Two of the main reasons for me is that the kids at 18 are not being stretched enough and pushed enough. There's got to be a way of finding places for them to play professional football or competitive football that they learn from an early age. Because I think at 18, from 18 to 21, they should be playing league football. If they're good enough to play in the Premiership, they should be playing at a level of league football. But the second issue for me is that mentor those people in their lives that are actually going to guide them the right way. And there's so many, you get me onto it, there's so many ex-managers, professional people, good people, who I believe we don't regurgitate into the game. We don't actually bring them back into the system. We have millions of young coaches who have been to college and university and this, that, and the other, and they're very, very good in what they do. But there's no substitute for experienced, proper football people to actually show players what it takes. And it's not just about playing football. It's about managing your life. It's about managing your expectations. It's about being guided to become the best you possibly can at whatever sport you're in. And I think we miss out in this country. I think we miss them. There's a massive void in this country.
Because that culturally, Tony, that is acceptable in other places. Club like Ajax.
I think if you look at Spain, if you look at Southern Europe and you talk about, we followed Italy, we've followed Spain. Southern Europe is different. Their still families are very, very closely knit. So the kids are coming through a family that you know, still go to mass every Sunday. They're taught, they're brought up as a family. Unfortunately, in Great Britain or in England, that, you know, we've moved away from that for whatever reason, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Me personally, I think it's bad. It's a bad thing for the kids. But we have moved away. That's the way it is. So we have to deal with it. We have to accept it, look at it, realise it, and deal with it. And I think, like I say, there's a massive void when we're not doing our job in respect of looking after those kids and teaching them life skills.
You know what's interesting? Neither of us have spoken about tactical. We're talking about human beings, the human side. If you affect the person, you'll affect their performance. And that can start at a very early age, I think, where you know, there's a difference between training and coaching. Loads of trainers, someone said this recently to me in the academy, said, we've got trainers who are very good. They can lay a drill on, they can organise things. When you're talking about coaching, it involves the person as well. You know, you're coaching the person, not just their skill set, but what are they like? What are they about? Do they understand the life they're going to go into? Do they understand the key core values, the old values, if you like, passion, pride, you know, work ethic, you know, the demand of what it really is.
I think I think if you speak to Dan, I think Dan will agree the games programme in the academy is not good enough. For the personally, he might argue now with me, but it's not good enough in respect of what we want and what we need. The academy football does not deliver enough competitive games for these players to actually drive forward and push forward. The gap between under-21s and professional football at the top level is too great. There's too big a gap. Coming out of the academy football at 21 to go in and play in the Premier League football, absolutely got, you know, you've got, you know, the Barclays and people like that who are just outstanding talents. Irrespective of what system you put, they'd come through anyway. But there's players there being, I think, left behind because we haven't got that. But like I say, the other thing that is big thing is the life skills. For me, only my opinion.
Dan, do you want to pick up on that point first?
Yeah, I think, you know, the games programmes come in leaps and bounds from 8s to 18s, and I think, you know, there's a real varied games programme from international games to tournaments to futsal events, and it's moved greatly over the last 10 years, and credit to the leagues for putting that together. I think where we all agree is there's a bit of a block is that gap, as Tony says, between coming out of under-18 football and into the Premier League, the 18s to 21s. What are we going to do with those players, and how are they going to get the necessary experience to bridge the gap into what's the best league in the world? Now, some clubs do it through a loan programme. Some clubs do it through getting the young players in and training with the first team a little bit more. But it is an issue that you go around and speak to the leagues, you speak to the clubs. It's just trying to bridge that gap between 18 and when you make your Premiership debut at 21, 22. It's that meaningful games programme and getting the best possible opportunities for the young players to stretch them in order to get into the toughest league in the world.
So you'd admit that is an area that needs addressing?
Well, I think that everybody sits around and looks at the solution. We need to find a solution. And by the way, it's not necessarily one solution because players progress at different rates. You know, some are early developers and ready to get in at 18. Some take a little bit longer. But I think it's to get those experiences and challenges to perhaps give more of our young players the opportunity to get through and play into the Premier League, which is what we all want.
Just to bring you back to your role at the FA for a moment, Dan, if we can. We've got a room full of coaches here. How important is coaching at this level? Right, I mean, we've got two of the best in the game here in Tony and Sean, but in that coaching for you and England to be able to achieve their aim, which is still to win the World Cup by 2022?
Well, every single one of us on this stage and every single one of us in the audience and every single person listening will have started their football experience in grassroots. So be it as a 6 or 7 year old, your first experience in football is a grassroots player, and you know the majority of people sitting here are grassroots coaches. So it's so important we get that first experience right. It's got to be enjoyable, it's got to be safe, it's got to be beneficial, and it's got to be something that's going to inspire and engage children to carry on playing, because we need the pool and the base of the pyramid as big as possible. So if that base is full of children that have a love of the game and want to stay in the game, and we grow that base of players and coaches that are sat in this room in boys and girls, you know, that gives us a much better chance. It gives us a bigger base of players to choose from, and perhaps most importantly, people who love the game, not the image of the game. You know, they're in love with the game itself.
And to highlight that point about winning the World Cup in 2022 as well, I'm sure most countries have got a plan to try and win that World Cup. What is it about England's plan and vision? I mean, what sort of boxes are there that need to be ticked for that to happen? Because I know that if you don't have a plan, it will never happen. But like I say, it's a fiercely competitive tournament, which everybody wants to win.
Yeah, of course it is. There's 200-odd countries that enter into the World Cup. It's a tough tournament to win, and we haven't won it for 50 years or really got close, one semi-final since. So Why do I believe that we can do it? For some of the things we've been talking about over the last hour, I firmly believe that our young players are as good as anyone in the world. You know, up to sort of 18, 19, I've been lucky enough to travel the world and watch our teams play against Brazil and Spain and Germany and Argentina and Mexico and USA and everyone else. And, you know, we don't win every game, of course we don't, but our players are as good as anybody's. And if we can find some more solutions about some playing opportunities, get some more young homegrown players into the top league in the world, then it would benefit everybody. And I believe everybody's got the same success criteria. It's in everybody's interest to have a successful national team. We all want our academies to be successful and for players to have a chance, starting with the grassroots coaches and the grassroots clubs in this room, to have a pathway through the academies into the first teams, you know, and have some a bigger base of players for Roy and whoever the senior managers are going forward for the next few decades to choose from. And I believe everybody has that same goal and same vision. Now, obviously, club managers and club academy managers have to look after their clubs first. We totally understand that. But I haven't met a club manager or an academy manager yet that says they don't want a good crop of young players coming through their club.
And how important is this place? We're in St George's Park tonight for Five Live. Has this made a difference?
Yeah, I mean, we're really lucky. I'm really lucky that, you know, this has been a catalyst for change for us. This is our training ground. You know, if you ask Tony and Sean what it would be like not to have a training ground and to phone up every morning and try and find somewhere to train, and it's impossible. So we're able to have all our national teams to come and train at the same time. We're able to have Roy watch some of the younger teams train, pull them up, train with him, and have that engagement, if you like, and almost that sense of club feel. So when the players come to England, they know this is the training ground for England, and it's a bit of consistency.
Tony, to your mind, can that make a difference? It's a bold plan to try and win the World Cup by 2022, but a place like this where we are tonight, is it a game changer?
Yeah, it's an absolute. Well, the game changer really is producing players. You know, you can have all the facilities in the world, but if you're not producing players, then it ain't working. So what we've got to do, we've got this in place now. We've got to find a better way of bringing. You know, we have some outstanding talent in this country. We have some outstanding talent, but there's a lot more within, I think, the academies that are being held back because the games programs, more than anything else, are just not up to the standard they should be.
Sean?
I think there's a mixture of that. I think also there's still a thirst, it seems, for you know, clubs at the top level to have foreign players come into their teams. From fans, that is. There seems a greater thirst for that than the young local lad who's a brilliant player who's come through the ranks type thing. You know. And
John, you can't say that because we've just been talking about winning games. You can have local players come through. You can have a team of local players, but if you keep losing every week, that manager ain't going to come or keep his job.
Which I was just going to go on to.
Yeah, the problem is.
Thanks, Tony.
The problem is the players have to be good enough.
Exactly that, which I was just going to go on to. So when little Johnny, the local kid, comes through the system, for one, he has to be good enough to get his chance. Once he's good enough to get his chance, he needs the support not only of his coaching team, he needs the support of the fans. You know, certain clubs were built on almost. I remember I was a young lad at Nottingham Forest, and Tony will remember at that time, Brighton Club was building a whole fan base mentality of getting young players into the team, so they were accepted straight away. Win or lose, a couple of ups and downs. But they were accepted. You know, it was part of the mentality, the ethos of that football club was young players are going to play in this football team. Man United did it so well, of course. And I must say, Arsene Wenger, who got questioned many years ago, there's a lot of young talent, English talent, you know, coming through there. I know it's bought in sometimes, but it's still young English talent.
We'll need to hang around for a couple more questions. We've got two more questions to ask you, but please, our live audience, show your appreciation for Dan Ashworth from the FA, for Tony Pulis and for Sean Dyche. We'll be back at St George's Park after the news and sport on 5 Live.
This is 5 Live Sport.
You're listening to 5 Live. If you've just tuned in, you missed an hour of discussion with Sean Dyche and Tony Pulis and various other guests as well. We have a live audience with us tonight. Good evening, everybody. If you've just tuned in, where on earth have you been? You've missed a lot of fun with these two. Gentlemen, thank you for staying on for a couple more minutes. We're going to hear from Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank in a moment, who was due to be here tonight, but he's gone and taken a job at QPR. So
Fear factor, you see. Yeah. We're playing them Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fear factor
He's
already.
terrified of that.
See, that'll be spun on Twitter. That'll be straight out there.
We are currently in December. Your favourite month of the year, January, turns up, Tony Pulis, with that lovely transfer window. I can't discuss coaching and management with either of you without talking about that. I know in the past you've said you hate it. For those who might be coming to this fresh, why does it annoy you to the extent that it does?
Well, I think it should be an open market all the way through to what it used to be till the end of March, because then it stops a frenzy. I just think it's a feeding frenzy, and I think we had a situation last year with, or we have it every window with Sido, where people get into people's heads that they're contracted to you, and then agents will ring them up. They'll listen to other people who've blown in their ear, and it distracts them. And I just don't like the fact that it's all pushed into 2 months, and everything happens. I also think there's enormous amounts of money that are spent that over a period of time or a period of a season, that money could be and would be spent most probably a lot better.
Yeah, I think it'd be more controlled, wouldn't it? If you're not in a frenzy to spend it, and the manager's under pressure, he wants his player in, he wants to win a game. So it escalates quickly, whereas if it was over a season, it would certainly be more control to it, because obviously the deals would be more controlled and played out in a more controlled manner.
The pressure as well, you'll come to January and Premier League clubs will look at their situation, their position in the league, and they'll think they have to spend to improve the team, to give them a better chance of staying in the Premiership, and they're chasing that pot of gold all the time. So the market then just goes through the roof, and there's a lot more money spent now in respect of not panic buying, but people who are maybe taking that chance because that pot of gold is so big now.
We were at the bottom end of the market last year, literally, financially, and it's very, very difficult because every player you go for, if there's one club even slightly bigger than you, the agent's going to go to them to get more money, etc., contractual money, that is, for the player. Then the club escalates the fee, so it's even more difficult. If you're at the bottom end of the rung of that market, it's very, very difficult to try and get players.
It's like being on the top table and seeing everybody eat their steak or fish or whatever, and you're just under there. You're on there, but you're under there just waiting for the crumbs just to fall off so you can pick a crumb up or two. But that's management, like I say, you have to accept that. That's what you're given, and you've got to make the best of it, and you've got to get round it. You've got to work a way through it and get round it to be successful.
When you see some of the fees even paid now for Championship players, I mean, money in the Premier League is, as Tony says, it's crazy, but Championship players and League One sides are able to bid huge amounts of cash as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, we paid a few quid for our centre forward. It goes up every week, actually. I think it's up to about 17 million this week.
That's the media, that's your.
It is the media. Yeah, everyone wants to spin it. No, for the first time we're in a position to do that. But there's clubs who have sold no one. Everyone forgets, don't forget that we've sold Kieran Trippier, we've sold Jason Shackle, and Ingsy is in process of being sold. So we'll actually balance the book considerably in profit. But you look at some of the Championship sides this year, spending unbelievable amounts of money, not selling anyone or selling very few, and unbelievable amounts of money, but not just the fees, the wages. We have quite a controlled situation at Burnley. It makes it difficult for managers, of course. We want to sign the best players at any level you're at, and you want to pay the best money to get them in. But there has to be a controlled element. With so many kind of, whatever word you want to use, sugar daddies, for example, as they call them, with these people who will put in millions and millions on top of the club's turnover, it makes the market forever difficult, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, because then, in turn, you've got some owners, there's a couple in particular, so wealthy themselves. We've been in for players. They just literally, every day you ring up saying, what do you think? They just had $1 million on. So you go in again the next day, and they had another $1 million on. You go in again, you go, well, do you want to sell him or not? The agent's telling us you do want to sell him, and you're telling us that you just had another $1 million on.
That must be incredibly frustrating.
It is. It's very frustrating. And particularly, in my case now, but last year mainly, we're attempting to do what was deemed the impossible at that time, stay in the Premier League, with spending very small amounts of money. Oh, it was incredibly difficult. And Tony knows more than me. He's been doing it for a lot longer, and at the top level, I mean. And he'll tell you the numbers. And players, with all due respect, it's not fair to give you names. If I told you the players, you wouldn't think these are household names, world beaters. And yet the contracts and the fees, I think it's fair to say, Tony, are unbelievable. It's a bizarre situation to be in. It's a very, very tough situation.
You've got a situation in football clubs now where you've got 20. You've got to name a squad of 25, and some of those players won't even play in the Premiership, or won't play a Premiership game, and will earn millions of pounds, and not even play one game in the Premiership for you that season. So the money has just gone through the roof. But they're lucky lads, and I just hope that they appreciate they're very lucky lads.
Well, listen, it's been fantastic for you both to be here tonight, be so open and honest with us, give us a real insight into how you both work at Burnley and West Brom and your hopes and dreams for the game going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Pulis and Sean Dyche. And Sean, before we let you go, I want you to listen to this, because you said you're taking on QPR this weekend. I'm sure you know they have a new man at the helm. Yes. He was from round these parts, actually.
Exactly.
But he's moved to Loftus Road. He is Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, and I managed to grab a word with him about his new job and about his views on coaching, because he's not only coached in England, he's coached in Belgium as well. So here is Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank on 5 Live.
Look, I want to work with this group. I believe that I can improve this group, and that there is a lot more to come from this group. So yeah, very happy to have this group.
Every manager, Jimmy, obviously has principles, has a certain way of working. Do you tailor that depending to the individuals that you have with you? So it will be very different at QPR to the way that you're working at Burton.
I think you have to tailor that wherever you go. You have to always do it a little bit different, because the individuals are different, but your beliefs have to stay the same, globally. But in that discipline, you have to be flexible,
I've heard you can be a bit feisty on the training ground. Have you displayed that?
Who's told you that?
I can't reveal my sources. Jimmy.
No, I'm not feisty. I'm not feisty at all. I'm just myself, pushing and just be nice, intense, and I want them to work intense and to release all that frustration that they have sometimes, and to make sure that they enjoy themselves,
Yeah, I'm sure you know that the English fans have very high expectation levels, and QPR will be no different to that, and they will expect a lot from you because of the success that you've had at Burton.
Yeah, expectation is allowed to have, to be, it's normal. You're allowed to have an expectation, you're allowed to be demanding. They pay good money to see good football, and we're going to try to give them good, successful, winning football,
You've experienced coaching in this country and in Belgium as well with Antwerp, and from your time as a player as well. I wonder how you would compare, Jimmy, those two countries primarily that you have worked in.
Well, England is England. England is a football country, isn't it? England is where football lives, Belgium, the style of football was a little bit different, but very, very good for me. They see football a little bit different than they see in England. The beauty of the game, everybody has got their own vision of football. That's why football is so big globally. I enjoyed working in both countries, and I'm hopefully allowed to work a lot longer in this country. I see myself, a big part of me is English. I've been here from 1997. My kids have been born here. My wife is English. So, yeah.
And what do you think of the standard of coaching, Jimmy? I mean, has it impressed you?
The standard of coaching, I don't know. I've not seen a lot of people coach. But I do know a few really good coaches. Steve McLaren is a magnificent coach that I've worked under. And it was a privilege to have learned and still be in touch with him,
Can I ask you about your experiences as a black manager in the game? I mean, have you found it harder to be given a chance? I mean, how can the game help, do you think, black and minority ethnic managers and coaches to get involved in football and to get those high-profile jobs?
First of all, I hate that word, ethnic minority. I don't like that word. Second of all, yes, I'm a black coach, manager. I just go with the flow. I go with it. If I want the job, I go after the job, and I apply for the job and believe that I'm good enough for the job and take the club forward. And that's what it is. Yes, I'm black. I'm going to stay black. I'm proud to be black, and that's it. And what is happening with other black managers or whatever, or not enough black managers, I don't know the numbers who want to be a manager and is black. So I can't really comment on that properly.
So do you think people make more of an issue of it than it is for you? Because it sounds...
I don't know. I don't know. I can't comment on it. I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge about it to be able to give you the right answer. I don't know.
But you've never faced adversity in that situation yourself, or discrimination?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Not that I think. Yes, I have applied for jobs and I have not been interviewed in the past, but I've had my chance at Burton and I'm getting my chance now at QPR and that's what it is, and I love my chance at QPR and I will do my utmost best to be successful at QPR, and that's it.
That's Jimmy Floyd Hasselbaink. I'm sure you'll agree, our live audience tonight, that man will have no issue dealing with the media in his new job at QPR. We've been joined on the panel tonight by Les Howie, who's the FA's head of grassroots coaching, and a familiar face to you all as well, the man in charge of England's under-19s. Adi Boothroyd is also with us this evening. Ian Dennis is our man in the stands. Ian, you have a familiar face from another sport with you.
Well, Jimmy's looking forward to seeing Sean Dyche at the weekend. Alex Tudor was actually looking forward to seeing Jimmy Floyd Hasselbaink tonight, the former Surrey and England cricketer. You're a big QPR fan.
Yeah, I am, Ian. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, big fan. My friend next to me sort of invited me up and sort of looked on a list and he had said that Jimmy was going to be here, so I jumped at the chance to come here. And obviously it's a beautiful place. I've never been here before, so to come here and just see what it's about is a great honour.
Can we tap into your insight as to how cricket compares to football?
Yeah, it was very interesting listening to Tony. Some fantastic points, and a lot that I work with now because I'm a coach and well, I deal with a lot of the youngsters. You're having to mould them a little bit. I'm slightly old school with how I coach, and you're dealing with different personalities and stuff. And as he rightly said, there's a lot of kids that coming from broken homes, and it's how you deal with them when they're there. And there's a lot of money in the game, and you do find, especially with the parents, they're pushing their kids towards it rather than them, well, especially with a few of them, wanting to do it. And at that early age, if it's coming from the kid, I've always said, if it's coming from the kid, you're going to get a lot more success. And I do find sometimes it's a little bit of a lottery ticket for a lot of these parents, and they're making their kids do it. And if you do that by the age of 13, 14, other aspects of life come into it, and they go. And you do lose some great kids.
An added bonus on 5 Live. Alex Tudor, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Ian.
Give him a round of applause, Alex Tudor. Alex, can I just ask you one question on what we're hearing there from Jimmy Floyd Hasselbaink? I'll get Ian to bring his microphone back. When Jimmy Alex was talking about, I asked him a question about being a black manager, and he says, I don't like being asked that because I hate the term black and minority ethnic. Is that a comment that chimed with you in your current role coaching cricket now?
Listen, I grew up in an area, and a lot of people do ask me, I grew up in an area where pretty much every county cricket club had a black player playing. So when I was watching on TV or listening on radio, there was always someone I could sort of, emulate to. Through the years, it's changed massively. And now it's, it's dribs and drabs, and because of, the finances in the game and with Sky, not a lot of people, I find, especially kids, they're not able to see the game. And if they're not seeing it and identifying it, it's going to be very hard for them to sort of think, right, I can do it. But as a young black guy in the game, look, listen, I don't know, 6'5" helps, but I haven't had any issues or anyone stopped me or anything like that. And I've sort of just got my head down. I've always wanted to coach. It's something I'd done at an early age. We were encouraged, especially when I was on the academy now in Australia. Rod Marsh was massive on, do your badges, a bit like what Alex did with his young lads. Do your badges and give back. When you're out the game, my next big buzz is coaching the future. And for me, I get a bigger buzz than maybe even taking 5 wickets as I did at Trent Bridge all those years ago.
That's great to hear. Let's bring in Les Howie on this, who's the FA's head of grassroots coaching. Les, I've got to ask you about what Jimmy was talking there about black and minority ethnic coaches at grassroots. How difficult a journey is it for people like Jimmy and for others to get those jobs that they desire in the game? Is that a real issue still within football?
Well, I think if we talk about grassroots, which is probably where my area and expertise is, that think we've done some fantastic work over the last 5-10 years with the work with the coach programme, which has looked to provide bursaries and support for BME coaches to come through and be developed and supported. If you look at level 1, level 2, the numbers would statistically be where the population is in this country. But I think it's not only just building on that as well, so it's the bursaries that are available. Through Sport England this year, we've been able to offer 100 bursaries for BME coaches. But it's not about doing the coach education, it's the support that goes with that. So we've established a mentor programme. I know that Tony spoke earlier about the importance of mentoring. So we've now got a mentor programme that works across all football, but with then some targeted work to support underrepresented groups. So Steve Smealies is here tonight, who works on leading that work, and we've got a number of the mentors. There's a Colin Kin at the back there from London. Colin was inducted into the FA Coaches Hall of Fame last night. Is someone who's been a real example of the work of mentoring and support for BME coaches to come through and have the opportunity to develop their qualifications and develop the practice.
Ian, you've got someone else who wants to come in on this issue.
Yeah, in fact, it's exactly who Les has just been talking about, Colin King, mentor, coach, educator, and you also actually run the Black and Asian Coaching Association as well, don't you? And congratulations as well for your achievement last night. Do you feel progress is being made?
I think it's sometimes manufactured, and we're not really looking at the institutional barriers that are facing BME coaches. So when Dan asked the question, the answer was he doesn't want to be labelled as an ethnic minority coach, but he still embraces his blackness. But what he was saying, I thought, was he doesn't want to be measured solely by race. And that's the privilege that white coaches have in the game, that they are just measured by competencies and networks. What we're defined by something called blackness. So we have to wait to see whether a black coach is going to succeed, whether we have opportunity. That's an indirect form of discrimination. Hence, we're now looking at the Rooney Rule that should be introduced in the season after next. And that's about ensuring that you widen the pool, develop the opportunities, not just for BME, I'm talking about Asian coaches, women coaches as well. We need to look at that. And we also look at the institutional fabric of football. And so it's much more transparent. How do you get a job? Because if there's two parallel systems, there's a networking for white coaches, and we're going down the networking, we're actually preaching institutional racism in football. So we need to celebrate what we've done, but we need to look at what the challenges are for the future.
Did you agree with Troy Townsend when Chris Ramsey and Chris Powell were sacked on the same day, when he said it was a damaging day because two black managers had lost their job?
Yeah, because we get seduced that our success is based upon how well they do as black managers. So it felt spiritually that we had lost. There was a bereavement, there was a death. We had lost the opportunity. But we need to look at what is the next step, the next challenges. So when people ask questions about do you succeed as a black manager, you need to ask, what is it about the game that's producing a culture that's excluding certain communities? That's the question and challenges you need to look at.
Colin, thank you for your time.
Congratulations on your award last night as well, Colin. Thank you very much for that. I almost feel we should do an entire programme on some of the points that Colin has raised, but there's a number of other issues that I want to address tonight on 5 Live before we finish. And one thing that lots of people, Les, have been mentioning is the cost of becoming a coach. For those in the room as well, just nod or make a noise. Is that something you have considered that has maybe even made you think about giving up coaching? I know everyone loves to be involved because they love to bring young boys and girls through in this game that we love so much, but has the cost been a real issue for some of the people in our room tonight? Yeah, lots of hands raised, lots of nodding of heads. Les, it is something which can keep people out of the game.
We'll look at some of the things we've done recently. We've just been able to increase our county coaches from 16 to 40. So we've got additional staff out there in the counties who are there full-time, funded by the FA, who are then able to run the courses and hopefully then reduce the costs by the fact that it's an FA member of staff delivering. And we've actually been able to put in about £500,000 of bursary money to reduce the costs of the youth awards and the level 2. So some real difference there about funding that will go in to reduce the cost of the courses going forward. I think sometimes as well we've got to look at the average cost of a course when you break it down is £5 per hour. When you look at the level 1, the level 2, and I know for many that can still be a lot of money, but I think we need to put a context on there of actually what the real cost of the education is, and then look at the bursaries that are available to reduce the cost going forward as well.
Adi Boothroyd is with us on our panel tonight as well, who looks after England's under-19s. Adi, when you first took that job, and you've been very successful in that role, When those players arrived at their first training session, were you impressed by the standard of coaching that they had up to that stage, or did you think, there's a big job on here? What was your first reaction when you got there?
Well, my first reaction was how talented they were and how talented they are. It's about opportunity, and those players have been given an opportunity at clubs to be coached by good coaches. The next step is, where do they go from playing with the 19s and the 20s and the 21s? And Tony and Sean alluded to earlier that at this moment in time, we need to get those players through, because every Englishman benefits and woman from that.
So you would agree that is the key time, that 18 to 21s?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, the attitude, the application, and the talent of these young players that are in our system is immense. Now they've got a long way to go, and they've got a lot of pitfalls to avoid along the way, without a shadow of a doubt. But there are some very, very exciting players in this country, and unfortunately we don't get to see as many as we would like.
So a few falling through the gaps. Ian, you've got someone with a question for Adi, is that right?
I'm with Luke, who's travelled from Stoke, far away.
Do you believe that we're putting some players off by dropping them out of scouting of clubs at young ages, where we could potentially have a player who's world class when he develops at a later age?
The other side of that is Jamie Vardy and Chris Smalling that perhaps were dropped out or not thought of as were going to come through as players, and then eventually find their pathway through non-league and a little bit of luck here and being seen at the right time and coming through and playing at international level. And there's also a train of thought that some young players do need a little bit of stress in their lives. Some studies would show that a little bit of stress and something that happens in your life can actually push you on, give you that resilience that you need. But that doesn't mean that we should be dropping kids out left, right and centre. Far from it. If they're coming into the game because they love the game and the parents want them to do well, and the academies are putting things in places for them to do well, then that's what you want. But if it's just a numbers game, then it's not. To give kids delusions of grandeur, the stats are frightening. As old as players coming in at 16, that there's a huge dropout, 96-97% by the time they're 21. So there's a number of different things alongside that.
We've talked a bit about representation tonight. If you've listened to the whole thing, you might have noticed that the vast majority of voices that you've heard have been male. We are about to address that. Ian, who have you got with you?
Well, I've got the FA's Women Under-15 national coach, Emma Jenks, with me. Emma, how is it from your point of view in terms of numbers in the women's game?
I think, first off, we're in a stronger position than we've ever been before with women's football and with women's coaches, particularly as a result of the women's success in Canada in the summer. We've seen a real spike in interest, first of all. And I think that's great for the game and for the women's game, that now we do really have role models in quite senior coaching positions. So if you look at the likes of Marianne Spacey, who works with the senior women, you look at Mo Marley, who works with our under-19s, Emma Hayes, who's just won the Women's Coach of the Year award. So we're in a really strong position. Of course, we want more female coaches all the time, but we're delivering bespoke courses now for the females. So again, even at those top levels, so UEFA B, UEFA A levels, we have bespoke courses for our women's coaches. And we're also working with and identifying some of our current and ex-players, England players, who obviously have been there, seen it, and again are kind of role models who now are also taking their coaching badges as well.
Emma, thank you very much.
I was working at an event a few weeks ago with Izzy Christensen and Tony Duggan, and they were both saying that the impact that the World Cup has had on attendances, on interest, on both boys and girls hanging around outside the games to sign autographs. I mean, it is essential. I want to get Adi on this as well, but it's essential that the national game thrives so that the domestic game can pick up on and have success on the back of that as well, isn't it, Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the World Cup, what we've seen is that I think females for the first time really see that there's a pathway there. And we've talked a lot tonight about opportunity. I think finally, girls that are sat at home that perhaps thought, well, what's the point previously, actually can now say, well, there is a pathway for me, I can progress in this. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with that.
And to bring it back to the men's game, Adi, Dan Ashworth was sat up here on stage talking about that plan to win the World Cup in 2020. I just wondered finally, do you feel, coaching the under-19s, do you feel part of that? And do you feel that there is a clear vision for the national game in England?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think Emma's just alluded to, talked about the World Cup in Canada. Part of Mark and Marianne and Lee's vision for going to Canada was they wanted to win it, one, but secondly, they wanted to inspire a generation. And when you have a run like they did and play as well as they did, it has inspired a generation. I can remember 1996, 1990, you know, getting ready, watching the games, and the whole nation is locked in to what goes on in those games. So it means an awful lot to be an England fan, and I feel very, very proud to be part of what it is that we're all trying to build. It isn't going to be easy, and it is a long pathway from when they start at grassroots to coming all the way through. And the connecting the game mantra for the last few days is that's exactly what it is that we all want to do something and be part of something bigger than ourselves, and that's England winning that World Cup. Providing that those players from an England perspective are pushed and stretched, and that talent is given its head to grow in our English leagues, then I think we're all going to be pleasantly surprised by what we see. But they have to have the opportunity, because without opportunity, the talent doesn't grow and doesn't be what it could be.
Thank you so much for being part of our question time tonight. Just to let you know, we have a special interview with two-time Olympic gold winning